Well, welcome to New Rock Meetup. Thanks for coming. Hope you come back often and tell your friends. If you're new or you haven't been here before, hope that you'll go to newtracksmodeling.com. That's our website. It's newtracksmodeling.com and register, and you'll receive all of the notices about our future meetups and our train shows and the other activities that we're involved with. The next My Build show is going to be December the 12th with Chris Coates moderating it. And Chris, you want to say a few words about it?
Sure. So far we've got 3 people signed up for it. So there's plenty of room. So if people want to share what they're working on or have something that they're stuck on maybe, or if you want to show off your pride and joy, please give me a call or drop me an email, railrunner130 at hotmail.com or yahoo.com. Both of them work. And that way I can get you on a schedule.
And what's your email again?
It's railrunner, all one word, 130. And it's either hotmail.com or yahoo.com.
And I really hope a lot of you will take Chris up on this, because it'll be interesting to see what you're working on and how it came out. We're having a train show on January the 16th and 17th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We've got 2 great sponsors. The Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonium and MRH Media, Joe Fugate's organization. And we're really pleased that they were interested in our show and wanted to sponsor it. Vendors, if you have not received an invitation to any of our shows, it's not because we don't want you, it's probably because we don't know about you. And if you're interested in appearing in one of our virtual shows, we plan to have them every month or so. I appreciate it if you would give me an email so we can get you on our list, because if we don't know about you, we can't invite you. Dylan, if you can put my email up on the chat, I'd appreciate it. Next, I'd like to go to Paul Thompson, who has got a quick tip for us. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Great, thank you, Jim. Dylan, can you throw the first picture up, please?
Aye, sir, coming right up.
Okay, I thought tonight I would put something out that is really quick. It's a simple little thing, but I got asked a lot about this when I was working train shows back when we actually had them. On the left-hand side, you can see a number 5 KD, and this is for my HO people here. As you can see, when you put the thing together, you have the coupler, the spring that inserts into the coupler box, and that's how everything goes together. But every now and again, you run into a coupler box that's either an old style with a little bit of tab in it, or it's too small. And that's what I'd like to point out. It's probably better at times to use the coupler on the right, which is the whisker coupler, which will just go right into the box. The spring is all there. Once the little springs are in, you don't have to worry about crushing that little brass spring on the left. Dylan, can I have the next slide, please? Oh, yeah. To sort of demonstrate this, I scoured around and I don't have an old box anymore, but I did find a narrow box, and this doesn't show it all that well, but it's a narrow box on the right-hand side, and it has a whisker coupler in it. And you couldn't possibly put that spring in. I should have put them next to each other, but I hope you can make the idea. And for all you purists, I know the whisker coupler in the middle is not a standard number 5. It's actually a shelf coupler, but I was putting it on a tank car, and it's all I had on hand. Dylan, next picture, please. I've tried to demonstrate sort of what goes on here. This is where the coupler spring would go. And in this car box, it just fit, but I would actually have to have taken a screwdriver to press fit it in, which would start to limit things. And at the back, you can see there's a little bit of space where this spring doesn't rest right against the back of the box. So in that case, I would install the KD whisker coupler. It's a lot easier. It's a few pennies more, but it's well worth it to somebody who has not changed a lot of couplers, and it makes it a lot simpler. And I hope this helps a few people that might have a coupler problem. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you, Paul.
can I actually add to that? So, aside from my camera falling down, basically I actually use 1/48, the whisker couplers. I use those for everything.
Yeah.
Just because I found they're very easy to work with. So I'll second that. They're for the average Joe Schmo who's just starting out, just use the whisker couplers. They are a little bit more expensive, but the lack of hassle is worth it in my mind.
That was my point, Dylan. The lack of hassle is worth it for somebody that just does one or two couplers, especially when they're buying an older car.
Paul, the old 5 and 10 spring is good for something. It's for wheel pickup, so you can have all-wheel pickup. You solder a wire to it.
Yeah. There's other uses, but I didn't want to complicate this too much. Thanks, guys.
Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, next I'd like to turn to Clark Kooning. Clark is going to be with us every first Saturday of each month to talk about modeling with Clark. So Clark, I will turn it over to you, sir.
All right. If Dylan will allow me to share.
Yep, screen share is all set up and ready to go.
Thank you. Okay, come on here. There we go. How's that? Everybody see that?
Yep, we're golden.
Okay. So welcome to 15 Minutes with Clark. And when you, now let's see if I can operate the up and down here button. One of the things I always like to do, I always like to introduce myself to people. People don't always know me, or whenever somebody's on a show, they should always introduce themselves, because then it gives you a good idea who they were and what they've done in the past. And hopefully if they got some credibility. So I was the one of the last MNVPs for the overall NMRA. Several years ago, way back like 1986, I believe, I developed the Modeling with the Masters program for the NMRA and taught that for pretty well every year, or almost every single class we did, I was there. I've been the Niagara Frontier Region past president twice. I've been the NMRA Canada president once. I've been NMRA director for Canada on the board for several years. I've judged lots in the AP nationally and regionally and at singles. I was the vice chairman for Toronto in 2003. Some of you may know me from my my hosting days on Trainmasters TV from Model Rail Hobbyists. And I'm a regular on the Model Rail Radio podcast. I've taught night school for several years at Adult Night Education. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine who's an MMR in Australia took my course, and actually so did several others, and taught model railroading at night school in other countries. So I was quite taken back with that. Currently model in several scales. I'm a rubber gauger. I have ON30, I have ON3, SN3. My big layout right now is HO. I do have some N scale T tracks, and I do have two ON30 display layouts, I'll call them. I live in Elliott Lake, Ontario, which I'll show you where that is in a minute. And I retired after 35 years of being a paramedic in the Toronto area and supervising as well. And that's where I live, way up here in Elliott Lake. If you're from my house to Chicago is about a 10-hour drive. To Michigan to Detroit, it's about 8 hours. Just to the border from my house at the top of Michigan is a 2.5-hour drive. And if I was going to drive down to Toronto, it's a 6-hour drive. So I live right on the top of the North Channel, as they say. All right. So let's look at some quick tips and to help you improve your modeling. I'm going to sort of run through them really quickly because I think most of you guys are pretty experienced. So no need to sort of dwell on some points, but everybody can pick up something. So let's go. All right. One of the things I always say to people, use a sharp X-Acto knife. The worst thing you can do is sit down with a dull blade. And the reason is because you really tend to you push hard, and that's when the knife slips and you get cut. And I've seen lots of it. And I picked up even fellow modelers when I was working who had very severe cuts, and I had to take them to the hospital. So change your blade. One of the great blades, a basic number 11 blade are fine, but the new series called the Z series are laser honed, and they are razor sharp. Now, I know a lot of people like to use scalpels and so forth, and so do I for a lot of instances, but these Z series blades or Z series blades are fantastic. All right, let's talk glues. Woohoo! Plastic cement. Plastic cement is not really a cement. It's a solvent. Plastic cement melts or dissolves the plastic surfaces, and as it evaporates, which happens fairly quickly, the plastic hardens again to form a strong bond. Now, a lot of you know that Tester's tube cement, and you know what? Why that's so gooey and filled and strung out is because it's filled of plastic cellulite, and that's what makes it that gunk. What you really want to use in most cases is a true plastic or a liquid styrene cement. Testers is one that I really like, and Tamiya. Now, they do come in different viscosity, so we'll talk about it too. So upon evaporation, the styrene solidifies and the joint's complete. Remember, the amount of solvent is equal to the drying time. So if you really put a lot on, it takes a while for it to evaporate. Now, bonding styrene in parts, use a liquid type. Use a small 000 sable brush is important to apply the solvent. Not the big brush that comes in the big Testers bottles or even in the Tamiya. And the reason why you want to use the sable brush is that when you dip it in the solvent and you put it on your model, you don't have to clean it. You don't have to do anything. It will just evaporate off of that sable. Now, if you use something else, such as like a nylon brush, it'll eventually just evaporate because the solvent will eat that nylon and stuff. So just use a solvent or a sable brush, and after a while, you'll notice there's a little white powder on it. And just pull that powder off with your fingers. And the reason why there's white powder is because that is the little parts of styrene that have come up off the pieces of styrene onto your brush. And then as the liquid evaporates, those little molecules of styrene harden, and that's what's left, that little white powder. So just remember, there's different viscosities, such as this Tamiya stuff is really thin, and it runs like heck. Now, this hint I found from the guys Miles Hale and John Lawrence and Fran as well at several of our Modeling with the Masters when we did DPM kits. This is the glue for DPM models, or that combination between, it's not really a plastic and it's not really a resin kit. And there's several out there for them. This Fowler Expert is fantastic. It will allow you to move a little bit. And then once it hardens, man, it is on there. Now, the big problem with this stuff is that little needle applicator. Keep it clean by using a little brass wire. I have a little brass wire all the time, and I can slide it down. Now, if it really gets clogged, you can be very careful. Just heat it up with a lighter, and it will melt. Okay, but this stuff is flammable, so be careful with it. But it is fantastic. Now, the difference between Fowler Expert and Fowler Super is just the speed of which it dries. A lot of people use MEK or methyl ethyl ketones, I just stay away from it. This stuff is highly invasive. It really will leach into your skin. It's bad, nasty stuff. It is also very flammable, and even in the absence of a naked flame or anything, it can be a problem. So stay away from it. I know a lot of guys use it. Okay, AC superglues. Woohoo! Also, cyanotriolite. Most people are fairly familiar with them. They're fact-acting adhesives. They're basically industrial, medical, and household uses. I don't know if many of you know, but way back when, in even in the field hospitals and in some of the conflicts that they had, they used super glue to patch soldiers up. But what it was really developed for was when they were doing at the beginning of heart transplants, and they would take the two arteries and put them together. They would have to suture around them. Well, what happened? They would leak, and then they'd have to wait, and and they got fed up with it. So what they found was that by putting the CA on it, or coming up with this glue, they would put it on each end, and then basically glue the two ends of the arteries together. And then once it was secure, then they would suture it, and then they put another layer of the glue on, and it would seal that shut, so it wouldn't leak. And that's why if you get any kind of moisture, it's on your finger, you never want to touch it to your eye, or you never want to, oh hell, the phone. So just be careful where you put it on. The abbreviation, of course, is CA, which is the industrial type of grade. All right, when kept unopened, you can put it in a fridge. It'll keep it for a longer shelf life. I won't say it will extend it for years, but it will extend for quite a while. Now, CAs are very moisture sensitive. So when you take it out of the fridge, before you open it, let it basically come to a room temperature, because if not, when you open it, there'll be condensation in there, and that glue will become hard within a day. After opening, you should use it for 30 days. I always say, when you go to buy this stuff, buy it in the smallest quantities you can, because it will harden up, and buy 2 or 3 bottles that you don't open. Open containers should not be put back in the fridge. Okay. And then when you're using ACC, you can use an accelerator. I always laugh at this because, before we would boil water for a hot dog, we put the hot dogs in and we'd wait and go, Jesus, what's taking so long? And then the microwave came along, we put it in for 30 seconds, and about 15 seconds, we go, what's taking so long? And so by using the accelerator, we can actually even make that bond even faster. And it's kind of a greasy stuff. Don't spray it on with the bottle sprayer. Get yourself an applicator, and it looks like I may have cut off the one part with this. On the end of this tool is a very small hole, and all you have to do is dip that into the accelerator, touch it to the part that or near the part, and the liquid will run out and instantly glue that part. Now you can make your own applicator, and I really should show a picture of this by just taking a big, large sewing needle, stick it in the end of the dowel, and then grind off the tip. So basically you have a Y, and you can dip that into the accelerator, and it will come out via capillary action onto your model. So C8s are great for bonding very quickly. They'll do a large number of surfaces, but the surfaces have to be really mating well, and you should always test fit them before you get in to achieve a good bond. Again, super glue comes in a variety of viscosities. Make sure you get the right one for you, and I'll tell you a little story about that later on. They can be finicky with respect to surface contact and coverage. Too much or too little can affect the bond. So you have to watch. You'll get a feel for it. Generally, super glues are not good for foams, foam plastic and stuff like that, unless it's specified on the bottle. So check it. Sinos or CA works good in tensile applications. If you have a shearing force on that, such as a coupler box being pulled sideways, you'll find that sometimes it will not hold, because you always see the guy on the commercial with the helmet attached to the steel girder and he's basically hanging from it. That is just tensile. But if you were to push him from the side, he'd fall off, because CA glues do not like shear. They like just straight pulling apart. Okay. So good for projects, you know, they work really well. And again, just remember, there's no shear strength. CA is great for white metal kits. This is a little white metal kit I built in our Mowing with the Masters class, and we put these together. They work great. You just have to make sure the two surfaces are very clean and bright and shiny when you put them together. We had one fella, I said, only use the thick CA for this. And the guy said, oh, I wouldn't use that crap. I use thin. And at the end of the project, I had to literally take an X-Acto knife and cut it out from his hand, because this stuff just runs, right? So wood glues or polyvinyl acetate, probably the most common glues around. You know, we probably have it in your workshop already. Sort of one size does not fit all. There are different types of wood glue, and you can choose from. You know, most of the guys, we think of yellow glues and go from there, such as the Elmer's Carpenter glue. And it's kind of a good universal glue. You can do it for bench work, or you can use it for models. Nice stuff about this is that it's water-based, glues up very quickly, comes almost immediately tacky, so it holds better. And because when it dries, it becomes rigid, it's not flexible, then it's easier to sand. All right. So some wood glues can also be white and dry clear, so you have to check the labels. Generally, it sets in an hour, but takes 24 hours to be full strength. Craft glues. Now, this is where you have to watch. You know, water is a carrier. It makes an easy cleanup, and it's low toxicity, but boy, it really has to dry before there's any strength to it. You should always clamp it, and you shouldn't use it for any applications that are going to kind of require water resistance. Epoxy is generally two-part systems designed for high-performance bonding. As we all know, you have an A and a B generally, and mix them together. The biggest problem is most people don't mix them together, and they can range from a huge degree of flexibility and clarity, as well as the cure speed. So you just have to read the instructions. And one of the things about epoxy is they have great gap filling properties. So that works really well. Hot glue. Well, hot glue, great for scenery applications. The problem with hot glue is that it is hot and you tend to burn your fingers a lot. So I always keep a bowl of ice water around when I'm doing hot glue, especially for scenery. And it works really well. I have seen guys put together trestle bridges with hot glue. It goes together really fast. I won't say it looks the best, that's for sure. And never tell your friend's wife that he just bought a brand new brass engine and how's he liking it, because he could kill you. And that's it. That's 15 minutes with Clark.
Clark, I thank you so very much. That's fantastic. And that's a lot of good information in 15 minutes. You outdid yourself.
Well, I don't know about that, but
but I really do appreciate it, and looking forward to more from you. I mean, this is really great. And like I say, that's an awful lot of information to pack into 15 minutes.
I don't know if anybody has any questions, but
there is one comment.
Okay.
I learned this trick from my father when it comes to super glue.
Yeah.
Some of the old controls he would work on, because he worked on heating systems for 30 some odd years. Some of the old controls, when you had a short, it's because you could actually use super glue as an insulator.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
I think it's helpful to
Yep.
know. So then if you get glue on your wheels, that's probably why it's not working.
I think you can use glue as an insulator in general, no matter what the glue is.
So they make some conductive glues and epoxies. I've used some of them. They're a bit of a mess to deal with, but they work.
I think a lot of those have Dylan have a little bit of
Silver in them. That's usually what they put in them.
yes, or I've even seen some that have a little oh hell, what's the word? Graphite.
Yeah, because graphite's conductive.
Graphite is very conductive. We had a guy who put some India ink in a spray bottle for a module. His module got checked out a week before electrically. He was finishing up some scenery and he sprayed the whole sort of track area with his ballast with some India ink to tone it down. And when he put it in, we had this major short. And basically, and the only way we could figure out how to do it for him was we had to take a Dremel and cut down right down the middle of his flex track on both sides.
Sounds like fun.
And in the middle, like we had to literally separate all the rails.
That's a problem.
So, but all right. Well, thank you for watching, you guys. And if you have any ideas or questions, Jim asked me about techniques, and I'm going to get to some of those a little bit later on about using styrene and some wood techniques. So hang in with me. I think I've got 4 of these ready to go. So the 5th one will start to get into techniques, and that the other ones are kind of like this, where they're tips and quickies. So we'll go from there. So carry on, you guys.
Thanks so much, Clark. Really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And listen, we're going to be doing one of these. It's going to be different every show. Clark is going to do his the first Saturday of each month. Second Saturday is TC Carr talking about electronics and computerization. Third Saturday is Andy Kinney talking about operations. Fourth Saturday is Greg Cassidy talking about what's new, what new products the manufacturers are coming out with. Wednesdays, we're going to have 2 people. Philip Richard is going to be on talking about building models and showing us how he does his and what it's like to build a kit and to build it from scratch. And Jim Murphy is going to talk to us about automation and about using these new little things. I forget what you call them, TC.
Arduinos.
Arduinos, that's the word, for lighting and for sound and for different types of automation. And I think that's really going to be interesting. If anybody has any different kind of subjects you'd like to share with us and do, kind of like Clark did this one tonight, please let me know, because I think these kind of different subjects that we can explore are going to be something different for our shows and hopefully benefit a lot of different modelers. So with that said, I'd like to turn to Aaron, who owns Apogee Locomotive Works. Aaron, I really do appreciate you being here tonight. I was fortunate, I think, to find you, and I'd never heard of your company before, but I'm fascinated with it, and I think other people will be too. So welcome, Aaron.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, my name is Aaron Piotraschke with Apogee Locomotive Works, and I started this over the around July during quarantine with a old SolidWorks license that I had. It was for another project for school that failed, but I figured I might as well start looking into model trains because I was getting back into the model railroading hobby after I didn't have very much to work with in live steam. So the first model I made, I actually have right here. It's quite terrible. This was the first fireless I made, and it doesn't really look like anything, but I figured I'd improve, and eventually I started designing the Pennsylvania Power and Light fireless locomotive. That is my first model that I ever made, and here it is now. And these shells fit right over a Bachmann Porter 060 chassis. So all you need to do is unscrew the two screws that hold the original shell on, and they just pop right on. So by themselves, they were really good kits, and I developed different ones. This was the third one I designed. But as I was doing this, I just kind of learned more and more about CAD. The second model I designed was a box cab, and this is the prototype shell of the box cab. And the reason why it's unfinished and slanted right here is because the power went out the day that it was printing. So it was printing like that and just ended. But
I speak from experience when I say that sucks.
yeah.
Aaron, you know, I've done my own 3D printing. I have other people do it at this point because, you know, reasons. But yeah, I there's many a times I've been printing something and the power flickers and there goes your print.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah. That was actually during the famed derecho storm that destroyed the Midwest completely. So yeah, it took forever to get power again. That was fun, especially for me. But yeah, I developed that one and it turned into the box cab shell that I have now. At the moment though, I have I think about 7 or 8 models. The next fireless I made after I made that box cab was this, which was a earlier version of a fireless, and this allowed me to make the Chesapeake and Ohio one. I did have a request to make the C&L one earlier, but I literally didn't know how. My biggest issue was that the Pennsylvania one had this heavy shrouding on the running boards, and the C&L one did not. And this is a tank engine shell. So basically what I was trying to do is put thin running boards on a tank engine. So I hadn't had a clue what to do. And it wasn't until this one that I figured it out, where I basically have very subtle little flanges under the running boards, but they're extended outwards. So they look better. And of course, these just snap right on, and these little toolboxes there are just to compensate for the circuit board. But all these kits they have decent detail at stock, but they're all designed to be modified. They are shells that are ready to run once you put them on the chassis, but they are all encouraged to be modified. For instance, here's Pennsylvania Power and Light shell, where all the grab irons were just ripped off, and you can just drill in new holes and put in brass ones. So it's really a casual kit. You can just, I feel like doing this today. I'll learn on this thing. The reason why I did all these really weird prototypes is just because, well, the thing is that you see a lot of models out there right now. They're all GEVOs, modern stuff, and there's nothing wrong with doing modern railroading, but there's a lot of people my age who don't do modern railroading because, I'll be honest, there's not much operations that you can do versus the 50s or something. And I know people my age who do 1800s and up, and I personally model 1950s to 1970s because I can still all do these really niche operations. And I wanted to make some locomotives that were unique. I have my atomic locomotive, which I'll discuss also. But I've also been working on some new box cabs. For instance, this interurban version of my standard Apogee EIR box cab.
What does that fit on, Aaron? What does your box cab fit on?
Oh yeah, they fit on the 70-tonner, the Bachmann 70-tonner chassis. And this one has a Loc sound in it with custom sound. But yeah, all you need to do is take off the original shell of a box cab, excuse me, GE 70-tonner from Bachmann, and screw this on, and it just slides on. there's a few modifications that you can do. So for instance, this one I glued on my my trolley poles and my pantograph mounts, which I have the trolley pole mounts out right now, but not the pantograph mounts because I want to get them a bit more durable.
Okay,
And then I also have, I've been working on a few new projects, mainly the nuclear locomotive stuff. Like this is a X12 that I've been working on a long time ago. But it's actually, because right now I'm just kind of playing around with niche stuff, and I'm hoping to get more and more out there. My biggest problem right now is I don't have all the stuff I really need. I'm working with 3 printers in a curing box, so I'm doing what I can, and I keep printing these every night, but I'm hoping to get more and more printers so I can make more and more stuff. The C&O one is my recent one, and it's been pretty popular. I'm really happy that I got this one coming out, and I got another wireless shell coming out. But essentially, what I'm really doing is just making all these really basic, well, not basic, but average detail shell kits that'll fit on models, and they can be casually kit bashed.
So
I've
what's the
also
future?
got,
What's the future hold for you?
well, the future, I'm hoping to get this company bigger, like just so I can make more and more stuff. My goal is to kind of, when you look at a lot of other hobbies like RC cars and model rockets, it's leaning like it's just kind of adding more to it, where instead of it just being running the trains and keeping the prototype, there's a lot of people out there who are taking a RC Jeep or a RC Toyota Cruiser and turning it into like some 8x8 monster. There's so much kit bashing and like modifications that they're doing now. And along with the standard prototype kits I'm doing, I just kind of wanted to bring some toned down, but still some customization. So of course I got the nuclear locomotive kits I'm working on, and those are going to be coming out soon. And I just
thought
kind
I
of
recognized that shell.
Huh?
I thought I recognized that shell.
Yeah.
I've got a
I can-
picture of that somewhere.
Yeah, I have. Now the nuclear locomotive is based off this one.
That's the picture.
Yep, and this is from a well, not I want to say 1960s or 50s kind of poster about the future of railroading and the technology. There was an actual proposed design, and this thing got scarily close to being designed. Well, actually, it was designed, just never built. The X12, and I really do plan on making this as a kit. It got all the way to like the Atomic Energy Commission, and I actually do have like drawings for it with dimensions.
I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, why don't you? Because I'm sure some people who are watching are going, atomic locomotives, what?
Yeah.
What have you learned about these ideas in your research when you were looking these up?
Well, it was one of the first models I ever like put together myself. When I was young, I joined a local model railroad club, and I just kind of would, look for really cool prototypes, mainline prototypes of the 50s. And I stumbled across it, and I was like, I want to make one of those someday. I had a box of junk that a local member just gave me. There's a bunch of old Mantua stuff, old blue box Athearn stuff. And I cobbled together a model of it with some styrene and some blue box alkyl PA1s and the a Mantua FA F7A. So basically what I did was I took the alkyl PA1, sawed off the front, the cab, extended it by putting on a F7 cab and made the front unit, and that hung out. And I made a little pilot out of an extra truck that would be the pilot. I still have the remains of that model, and I want to put it back together because I know there's more of it. Here's the B unit that I used, and I painted this so many times, and I finally decided, okay, I'll make a decommissioned unit. And this is not my best work, I'll be honest, because this was years ago. But I've always just, I mean, it was fun because I got a hard time from everyone else at the club because I was making a atomic locomotive out of blue box alkyl PA1s, but it just kind of got me into kit bashing. And then I was like, you know, I want to make more. So it got bigger and bigger from there. And now I have resin printers. I'm able to make this one. And while I have this kit being designed, and I have another chassis right here, I can make another X12, and this time it'll be all powered. It'll have its own sound system, and I'm hoping to use Locosound again because Locosound is my favorite decoder for this stuff.
What does a atomic locomotive sound like?
Well, from what documentation I've picked up from the X12 is it was basically a reactor that used a heat exchanger to basically a nuclear submarine. So it would boil the water into high pressure steam in that heat exchanger, run that down to a turbine, and then that turbine would generate electricity for all the traction motors. And then that wasted still the waste steam would go to a condenser unit, which was about 60 feet long. And then that would be recirculated. So I can imagine it'd be a bunch of pumps and a light hum and just a lot of steam hissing and then turbine RPM, which I'm not sure if I would put in a locomotive that I'd have idling in the club for too long. Be really loud probably. But yeah, I have a lot of other ideas for that. I'm really hoping to get that as kit. I don't know how easy it is going to be to supply the trucks. The trucks are the biggest problem, and the wheel sets and everything. I did want to make a chassis specifically for the Bachmann 060. Well, I wanted to replace the Bachmann 060 chassis I use for the fireless shells, but I just couldn't. And so, you know, because I need to have 060 wheels. I do have plans to make a fireless out of Northwest Shortline Stanton drives and removing the old wheels and putting 36-inch diameter wheels on there. But I haven't found any easy sources for 060 36-inch wheel. 36-inch diameter wheels. So.
Now, are you planning on doing any other unbuilt locomotives?
Yeah, I have thought about it. There's a few that I had interest in. One of them was it wasn't never built, but it was I think it was actually. It was a Baldwin turbine. It was had 4 trucks, and I couldn't find much information on it, but I'd definitely like to put that together. And I had a few other ideas just for fun. I don't know if I'll ever make them, but there was this one locomotive that I seen drawn up that it didn't make any sense. It was a scam basically, but it was the one where they had an 040 that was hooked up to smaller trucks and then smaller wheels, and then the other geared locomotives that they tried. And
I think I know the engine you're talking about.
Yes, that one.
There was a few different scams like that. And it's like, well, they built it for one, but they must have known it wasn't going to work.
Yeah. One thing I have been wanting to do is make a kit, shell kit for the Bachmann Shea, because there was, and the Climax, because there was a lot of times where not a lot, but there's several times where they took geared locomotives and put like entire shrouding and bodies over them for use in urban switching. There was one example was Union Freight Company. They had a Shay. That was a Climax. Sorry, they had a Climax, and then New York Central had a Shay, 2-truck Shay that was shrouded over.
If somebody would be interested in having you build the body for them, are you interested in that kind of business, or are you just interested in the kind of models that you like to build?
Well, I have been taking a lot of suggestions. In fact, this one right here, the early HK Porter Fireless right here was a suggestion. I would like to look into other options. Like, of course, I was gonna make more shells. I had a few ideas, like the box loaders here. I had a lot of other options. I take requests, and I had a request for a Whitcomb 65-ton, and I've been working on that for a while. My biggest problem was finding a chassis for it, and I've been looking all over for a chassis. But of course, these little Whitcomb 65-tons were really unique, and I can't find anything with the same wheelbase as it. So I've been looking for that, and I've been designing a shell for that. But
No, when you say the Whitcombs, do you mean those ones the Army used?
yes, the ones that were.
No, the ones you're talking about.
Mhm.
The ones that the sad part is there's some over in Italy that the Italians kept after the war because they're like, hey, they're here, let's use them.
Yeah.
A bunch of them are still here floating around in the States, and I think WK&S in Pennsylvania used one up until maybe 10 years ago when it finally gave up the ghost. Problem is they used unique components that you just can't pull off of any other engine. So it's like they're basically statues at this point because you can't get the parts. It's not like a GE where you can literally just go to a store and buy it.
So, Aaron, are you talking the Army center cab or the end cab?
The center cabs.
Yeah. Some of those parts have become available. Somebody is doing them on Shapeways.
Yeah.
But it's the whole, they're not shells for another chassis. They're unmotored. You have to figure it all out yourself kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, what would you use as a chassis for that? It's a weird length.
Yeah, I don't know. Luckily, well, one of the things I was doing with the nuclear locomotive is just kind of teaching myself how to do chassis. I can show you. This went through a lot of prototyping, and it's basically just an FDM printed, which is the filament printers, and it has these little slots where the trucks go. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you that. These little grooves here, and the trucks are duplicate Athern trucks, and they have these little forks that go on there, kind of mimicking the way they mount, and they just kind of click right in there. Sorry about that.
Aaron,
Yes.
what kind of 3D printers are you using?
I have 3 Anycubic photons and a Mono X. The Mono X is down right now, which is why I'm just getting orders out. But they're actually really good printers. They're hobby printers, but they're still really good. And I also have a Creality Ender Pro, and that's what I use for a lot of the FDM stuff. I have had a lot of other ideas, such as, these are fun. These aren't practical, they're fun. This is a modular steam locomotive chassis. And basically the idea is if you want to kit bash an 060, an 040, an 080, a 416-4, you can do that. Basically, I don't know if they're gonna evolve any more than this, but they're just little pieces of plastic that lock together, and then you could put axles in them. They have room for gear and motor mounts eventually, and they actually roll really well. And I've also been working on designing a line of kits that are just resin printed cabs, steam domes, and a bunch of other parts for steam locomotives, because you look at a lot of kit bashing markets, it's all diesel stuff. Like you get like dynamic brake vents and a bunch of other stuff like that, but you don't have anything for steam locomotives. And of course you have precision scale, but nothing like plastic or nothing easily modifiable. And there's a lot of people out there who do freelance railroading, and they take diesel locomotives, modify them to make their own little units, but nobody does that with steam because you don't really have options. So what I was hoping to do is make a line of different cabs, some for big articulateds that would be different from any other like roads or anything, and you'd be able to cut out easily the diameter of the boiler and mount those as custom shells, well, custom cabs, and do a bunch of other details that you could do for your own railroad or your own units. And they wouldn't be absurd. They'd just be like, you know, like all-weather cabs and other designs like that, and maybe superheater systems they could put in, and various extra compressors and whatnot. So, and I've also been designing. I have this thing. This is fun, and I've been wanting to make more. There's going to be an electric version of this. This is a Whitcomb 50-ton critter that I made recently. These are being made right now. They're little kits, and they're the first kit I've actually learned to use multiple parts. So the roof is separate, and they come with weights, 6 weights to fit in the hoods, and they also include phosphor bronze wire. And that phosphor bronze wire is, of course, for the handrails. And they actually run really good. I'm really surprised how well Northwest Shortline has made those trucks. They're really great. It'll run way better than I thought they would, because I don't know, they're just really well designed. But
is that the Staten drive or another?
Yeah, the Stanton drives. They run really well.
Yeah.
So I based an entire kit over them. And so the shell, you just bolt it down on the Stanton drive, and then you basically just paint it up from there. And they're actually mine ran really well. So, and of course I'd like to work on more kits in the future. So,
Aaron, Greg here. Friend of mine in our club got one of your Porter shells, and he's finished it for his layout. Is it okay if I show you a couple pictures of how it came out?
Yeah, I'd like to.
People might be interested in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he was basing it on. It's a branch off of the Western Maryland, where they had a leather tannery in Parsons, West Virginia. This was your shell once he put it on the drive. And this is a picture of it now in use in front of the tannery. Now, we have not been able to get over to his layout to run this because he only put it together this summer, but I'm looking forward to it someday, because he always wanted a fireless cooker there. And I think he's put sound in all his locomotives, and I think he went to the extreme of getting some of the correct sounds that would go in it, which is mostly just some kind of steam sounds, but not chuffing or anything.
Yeah, I have mine set. Mine has a Loc sound in it, and I have the momentum cranked, because these things were coasting more than they were actually running.
Yeah, he said you don't hear much.
Yeah, it's usually like a burst of power, and then it just kind of goes.
Yeah, do you get to know your customers? Do you usually talk with them?
Yeah, I do. I like to make sure that the kits work.
His name is Tom Matty. He's here in Maryland next to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always been I want to release good products, so I always ask for feedback and everything. I want to make sure that I haven't made any blunders.
Well, I can tell you, when he first got this, there were probably 20 emails he sent out about how excited he was about it.
Yeah.
Now is a fireless engine, is that considered a tank engine, or is that a different designation?
It's a fireless locomotives are basically their own own thing. They don't have any fuel on them at all. It's basically just a tank, a really well insulated tank, and you fill that up with external steam from like a factory or something, and they run on that, and they can get down to about I've seen the operating pressure on a builder's photo that said 60 psi, so they can run from down to 60 psi supposedly, and they would basically just run anywhere where if you ran, like they would run in power plants, chemical plants, and they were actually really efficient and hilariously economical, because if you have the power plant running, why not just basically run a free locomotive? They were great for like chemical plants, of course, because if you ran a diesel or a steam locomotive into a power plant or into a nitroglycerin plant, everything would explode, and that wouldn't happen with a fireless locomotive. But they ran all the way up into the 70s, and that's one of the reasons why I chose that prototype, is because they're a really niche and unique prototype that's ran all the way into the 70s, and sometimes even the 80s from what I've heard, but I can't be sure.
Yeah, I think there was one outside of DC that ran into the 80s. I think the engine still floats around. It is still floating around at this point. But yeah, that wasn't uncommon, just because it's not like you had to, do heavy boiler maintenance. It's just making sure the pressure vessel is intact. So, you'd have to test it. But if it can hold pressure and the valves work, as long as you maintain the moving parts, there's not much there you really have to worry about. It's the same idea as a compressed air locomotive, but steam has more energy, so it's easier to fire it up with steam.
You just have to make sure you keep your charge. It's kind of like driving an electric vehicle. You make sure that you can get back home with what you have left.
Compressed air too, sometimes. They didn't have steam anymore, so they just filled it full of very high pressure compressed air. One of them had another tank on top of the tank, where you've got that dome area. They actually had another tank up there, so that was, if that was full, they could get back to the shop and get more.
Now, what replaced the fireless engines?
From what I know, it was basically just diesel locomotives and electric locomotives with special protective equipment. So after they finally found a good enough insulator, I guess.
Biggest thing in an explosives plant is spark elimination. Because like Aaron said, if you have a spark go off in a nitroglycerin factory, there goes your nitroglycerin factory, the nitroglycerin, and probably a few blocks around it, depending on how big it is. Explosives are not fun when they go off. Let's just put it that way, for lack of a better way of putting it.
And additionally, by the time you were in the 70s, you didn't have many of your plants using steam anymore, where it was just free to tap off of the boiler.
They'd also, by the 70s, had come up with what they call fireproof motors.
Brushless motor. Brushless motors basically, and and you can run AC. You went from using DC brushed motors to, you could use a converter and convert it to AC, and your drives became AC. So you had no spark in any of the path then.
Yeah, just use a battery locomotive, so you didn't have diesel exhaust or diesel smoke or anything like that. They do a lot of that in mines now too. They got DC wires and our batteries and spark-proof motors. So I
Aaron,
guess the same tech would work in a bomb factory.
So Aaron, just one question on the support structure. So I'm assuming you do that to get enough length on the bed by
Yeah.
tilting it up an angle. You can build a longer model on the bed length of your resin printer.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, cool. That's good, smart, good thinking.
Yeah, it really helps, especially to get any special details. This really helps with all the details. And also it helps with the FEP film, because at the bottom of a printer, what separates the resin from the LCD is this really like thin piece of plastic. And if this was facing like this, you have all that tension. When it's done cured, it has to pull up. And this support material basically protects that FEP film.
Right, no.
Because like you have to pull it from an angle and it basically doesn't rip apart the FEP film in the whole printer almost. I've had a lot of issues with my new Mono X, just getting used to it, because that can print 4 at a time, which is really helpful because a lot of times I get behind just because I only have, 2 older anycubic photon S's. But when I was learning that one, it was extremely difficult because with that bigger build plate, there's a lot of tension on that FEP film. And you got to be able to, you got to have it perfect. If it's not perfect, then there's a problem, and then there's a big mess. But got it working finally. So,
Aaron, what got you started in 3D printing? Was it locomotives or the railroading hobby or something else?
well, what happened is in school, when I was really interested in entrepreneurship, and still am, of course, I was really determined to start a company on live steam products and kind of an open source, almost Arduino version of live steam. And I was going to make little plastic steam engines. And I was so confident in my idea that I went to SolidWorks and asked for an entrepreneurship license. And of course, that plunked instantly. It didn't even get off the ground. I was like, okay, well, I have this software. I'll get a FDM printer. And I kind of just, as I was trying to print this stuff, that's how I got into 3D printing. But then I finally decided, okay, well, this didn't work. So I'll just start printing trains for fun because I don't really have anything else to do with it. And so I just kind of, and then I made a fireless. And that was FDM printed. And then I got a resin printer because, better detail since I started to do train stuff. And this gross thing came out of there eventually. And I was okay with it. And I was like, I'm going to make it better. And I kept making it better until I got what I have now. And yeah, I'm glad I'm making models that people want. I've had someone say that they were looking for a fireless for 20 years. And I'm just kind of glad to have a model out there and just keep making models out there that, aren't GEVOs. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad they had an entrepreneurship program in your school.
Yeah. I'm hoping to make I just kind of make what people have interest in anymore. But the nuclear locomotive was my idea. But I'm really looking forward to making the X12 because that's the one that's actually based on a prototype. And I could probably put that on a layout. And I think the best part about that will be everyone will be just minding their own business, looking at the highly detailed stuff and the really precise BLI 484, and all of a sudden an X12 goes by.
Yeah.
I've just always been really interested in that ridiculous, absurd equipment. I've been wanting to make a hexaplex that was suggested by the Santa Fe. I don't have a drawing of it anymore. I wish I did, but it basically was, the front pilot truck had 4 wheels, and then there was 6 other runs of articulated frames, and 2 of them were on the tender. So it had an articulated tender. The boiler was articulated in the middle, supposedly. And of course, this was just way too much articulation. It never went off the ground because, well, the triplex failed. The triplex was actually originally the first prototype of how long can we make an articulated, basically. And of course, that flopped instantly. So then they never made the hexaplex or that. So
they did make the quadplex though.
They did?
Yeah, they made a quadplex. I've seen a
Okay.
picture of it, and it didn't run very well. They did make one. Norfolk and Western made a lot of things. Virginian made a lot of things, and most of it didn't work. Yep.
Don't even get me started on the Santa Fe with their flexible boiler.
Oh yeah, the 210-10-2.
Oh no, I'm talking about, they made a flexible boiler.
Yeah,
the boiler was articulated in the middle by like these bellows, and it's like, what? You can see pictures of it. They were meant to be passenger locomotives. They're like,
have you seen the tenders off those things? The tenders off those are strange. Aaron, have you ever heard of Berliner Locomotive Works?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's how I got some of my ideas.
I don't think he ever
Most of
built
my
anything,
goal-
but he had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Most of my goals is just how can I make something like this presentable? That's most of my goals. How do I make an X12 presentable? How do I make this thing that came off of this poster presentable? And I think I'm getting there.
Wasn't that off the front of a Popular Mechanics magazine?
This was, yeah. This
No,
was.
no, I'm thinking the other one, the one that you have a little poster.
Oh yeah, I actually haven't any idea where this came from.
I think it was on front of a Popular Mechanics magazine. That's where I've seen it. Where the original was, I have no idea. Somebody drew it up.
Yeah.
Now how much is a shell? Say if somebody came up with a well, one thing that talk about never built, but there was a design by Alco when Amtrak was looking for basically a new style of locomotive, and of course GE, General Electric, and Alco, threw in their, hey, these are our proposals, and of course they went with EMD, but the Alco version was taking if I remember correctly, a Century 636, and basically made it so it had a cowl on it. But the front end of the cowl was basically that of originally of an FA. So you had like the running gear of a Century, but the top of it looked like I want to say it looked like a short-nosed version of a PA, because it had the FA front end on it. How much would that, designing and making that particular shell, I guess, because it would have to go over you can find whatever Century shell or Century drivetrain and all that and just throw it on there.
Yeah.
I think I know the engine you're talking about. Alco brought that idea out originally for the Santa Fe. Around the same time the Santa Fe was getting the FP45s and those GE passenger locomotives, the U28 CG and the U30 CG. So that way they had, passenger power they could later roll over into freight when they finally, stopped running passenger trains. Alco did propose a cowl body version of the C636 that looks disturbingly like a modernized PA in the artist's renderings. Southern Pacific, I guess, must have looked at it at one point because the artist renderings showed it in bloody nose Southern Pacific paint jobs. Mm-hmm. Santa Fe passed on it. I think they gave it one last try right around the time Amtrak was looking. I think it was, I don't think it was Alco doing it at that point. I think it was whoever bought Alco's designs.
May I share, please?
Go right ahead.
Can you see that locomotive?
We can see a lot of web pages. It's something about putting out the trash.
You're seeing the wrong thing. Okay, let me find it again. I thought I had the right one clicked. Of course, I've never said I was that good.
Yeah, I think I just happened to, Amtrak wound up.
Yeah, that's the one that I saw in the Southern Pacific paint job.
Yeah, I got a drawing of it in Alco demo also.
Yeah, Amtrak. I just remember. I think Amtrak was started after Alco folded.
Yeah, but whoever I don't know if it was MLW, because MLW eventually folded into Bombardier.
Yes.
And they kept making Alco derivative designs. The LRC that Via Rail used, the diesel powered tilting train the Canadians used up until I think last run was in 2001. That was an Alco design. That was a 251 prime mover in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the strangest thing about them, this is a little after Aaron's time, they did a V18, 4,000 horsepower for, I think they built it for C.
Yeah, CP got the, I know the one you're talking about.
And then
it was a prototype.
That EMD had done a 645 V20 that was 4,200 horsepower. SP had 3 of those on test status, I guess.
I know the one you're talking about. I think it was converted. It was a conversion.
It was eventually converted to a lot of things. It became a test bed. Now, this is not very big, and I don't know how well it will show.
I actually think that engine's still floating around now that I think of it.
It's at a museum. The V18?
Yeah.
It's at a museum. There's the locomotive in Alco demo paint. That was a Century 636.
Yeah, M640 was the engine. It was a MLW project.
Yeah. So yeah, that was proposed in 1967 to Santa Fe and BN were looking for shrouded passenger locomotives, and the Santa Fe eventually did buy the GE version, but this version never got built. EMD kind of won that contest, I guess. So there you go, Aaron. Another thing. Wish I had a picture of the Ace 4000.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I definitely been interested in making one of those.
Yep.
Yeah, that if I remember correctly, that requires a little bit more engineering because they never even made the drivers that it was supposed to be riding on. So not only do you have to build the chassis, but also the drivetrain, because that's all unique also.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you could find a brass model of a Pennsylvania quad.
If I remember correctly, I remember someone. I think it was in Model Railroad, or someone actually did build one, back in the 90s. But of course, there's no video of it because it was built back then, and I haven't really seen it since then.
Yeah. But see, Aaron, there you can have modern and steam.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I definitely been looking for all prototypes I can find that are unique in some way. I have been working on some interurban freight motors and some interurban freight trailers. Because, well, I live near the Fort, well, I live around where the Fort Dodge, Des Moines and Southern would run. It's really terrible that they haven't saved a single thing from that railroad. But they haven't. Nothing exists anymore at the Fort Dodge. But I definitely love to make some equipment based on it. So that's definitely in the cards.
Have you thought of making any traction bodies? There were so many of those.
Oh yeah, I have. Of course, I do have the freight motor that I was working on, and this is slightly too tall. I'm still designing it. It was in really early stages, but I've just been, collecting as many prototype ideas as I can.
I live about 2 miles from the National Capital Trolley Museum here in
Mhm.
Maryland. And just right there, they've got 20 some different bodies from all over the world.
I definitely would
Aaron,
love to.
I'm intrigued with those little snap together pieces that I think scratch builders would love to be able to use to build the frames with.
Yeah, I've always been inspired by also John Allen with his 410.
Yeah.
Or was it a 480? I'm pretty sure it's a 480. But I just really love the idea of being able to make locomotives that no other railroad ever had or ever built or had, made. But like, you know what, for my railroad, I want this. I want this, really weird locomotive wheel configuration that no one has ever had. So
I don't
And,
know.
you, and you'd be able to snap those together to get that wheel that you wanted.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Yeah.
are you interested in any other scales, or you can stay with HO?
Well, I was actually definitely I was going to look into N scale, and I was also thinking about O scale. Just because O scale is, well, I really think it needs some more prototypes out there. There's got to be more reasons to model it. I know some guys at my local model railroad club who do 2-rail O scale, and it's really cool to look at. I mean, it just looks so nice. So I definitely would like to. And with that, the speed that 3D printing is advancing, I'm pretty sure it won't be long until I get to do some O scale. I mean, I have my Mono X, and that's still having some issues, but once I get that thing running, my 2 other printers will both be obsolete already. I mean, I remember seeing resin printers from 2015, and they're terrible compared to what there is out now. It's really it's a super fast development for that technology, and I'm really hoping.
There's a company called Matter Hackers. I forget the name of the printers. Is Paul Vaughn still on?
Yeah.
What's the name of that printer you bought?
A poly something.
Yeah, they've got one that's got a 21-inch long print tank. They call it the Colossal.
It's like $3,000 plus.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
That's for G.
The resin tank will take just about a gallon to make it work.
You can you can do G scale, or you can do full length passenger cars in one piece in S or O, or things are huge. You thought about S scale?
I have thought about S scale. I know someone my age who has also been thinking, like, what happened to S scale? It's the perfect scale. What happened to it?
Oh, S scale is the perfect scale.
I really
don't mind TC. He's biased.
Yes, I am. I model an S scale in 3 different gauges.
Aaron,
Well, when you said O scale,
about doing the EMD aero train
Oh yeah, I have thought about that.
in S scale?
Probably could. Probably could.
Yeah,
Kind of a neat thing
it's
to
actually
have.
It's actually kind of interesting. If you look at that picture you got, which I think is a magazine drawing, if you go look at the atomic train design stuff, it was a much more traditional looking engine.
Yeah.
And I think some artist took the GM Aero train and the nuclear train and created the front of the nuclear train based on the other. It's kind of an interesting where that came from, I bet.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, it's really kind of an amalgamation of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What area of the country are you in, Aaron?
I'm in the Midwest, Iowa.
In the St. Louis Railroad Museum, the GM Aerotrain they actually have one.
Oh.
It's out of, where is it?
The other one's up north somewhere.
Yeah, the other one's in Green Bay. The Rock Island one is in Green Bay. Or one of the Rock Island ones. I think they're both Rock Island.
Yeah.
It's out of St. Louis.
Well, there's two of them still around. The one in St. Louis is in much better shape, but the one up north has more cars because it's actually parts of two different trains.
But the Railroad Museum there out of St. Louis has a lot of information on it.
Okay. Yeah. I've always been, one of my recent projects was getting a sound program for the nuclear locomotive I have. I use Loc Sound for everything. I love Loc Sound because you can customize all the sounds. The Loc programmer gives you a software. You can edit all the CVs with sliders. It's really easy to tune in everything. And I've been hoping to find a bunch of sound files I can modify, like pumps and everything. It has some steam turbine sounds in it right now, but I'm definitely hoping to put more into it. But I might need to get a bigger decoder because right now it has a Loc Sound Micro. It actually runs up a Loc Sound Micro. The chassis itself is fairly light, so I had to put about 3 blocks of lead in there to get it to do anything. And it's actually kind of cramped. I'm gonna get more speakers in it too, and lighting and all that. It moves forward, backward, and has pretty indestructible electrical pickup. But yeah, I definitely want to get some other sounds for it.
We've done Loc Sound, got a programmer. What motors are you putting in that thing?
Well, right now it just has a motor from a Bowser trolley kit, but I'm hoping to get an actual source of motors when I kind of streamline this thing into a kit, because right now it's just kind of a test bed to see what stuff will go wrong so I know what to fix before I can release it as a kit. That's actually decent. So
the little Ketone motor that they use in their most of their HO scale stuff is available surplus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can send you something later.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as that little decoder would work fine on a motor like that. Instead of lead, try tungsten.
Okay.
It's actually denser than lead. So that's, if you're having trouble finding somewhere to put the weight, it's also not as deadly as lead, although it's by no means a safe material.
Yeah.
Any heavy metal is not good for you.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, did you see last Wednesday's episode?
Yeah, I did.
All right. So yeah, I was gonna suggest, maybe rewatch that so you can, get more, probably more information sinking in exactly what you should do with a new company.
Yeah.
And I think Dylan has been talking to you a little bit, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's been helping along the way. But
Yeah.
what I was really impressed when I met Aaron. It's exactly what the hobby needs. This kind of entrepreneurship, this kind of new manufacturers coming into our hobby, and that's one of the reasons why I invited him tonight and wanted to have you all hear him and meet him, because I think he could be one of the real manufacturers of the future. And he needs help. Yes, we all do, but I think he's moving in the right direction, and the products that he's coming out with, at least from what I've heard, have been extremely well received. So I wish you the best, and anything that we can do to help you, I'm sure everybody here will.
Yeah, thank you. I've been learning as I go, so hoping everything I can improve significantly over the next few years.
Well, I think we can all appreciate your enthusiasm, Aaron.
Absolutely, it's rare, and to find somebody your age that wants to come into the hobby like this, not just to build models that are already there, but to create for the future. I think it's just fantastic. So I really wish you the best and admire you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions for Aaron tonight?
Nope, I was glad to meet you. I'm glad to see what you're working on.
Aaron, you have my telephone number because we've talked by phone. If you wouldn't mind giving me a call tomorrow, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, listen, I've got a couple of other things that I'd like to say here. The next Wednesday show is going to be, I think, kind of special. Darren Johns from Australia is going to be back with us. He's been working on his model railroad and has built some new parts to it, and has further done some computerization to his model railroad. So this will be the second time for Darren to have joined us. But I think I had a lot of favorable comments from his first one, and I think you'll enjoy hearing what he's done since the last time he was here, and how his model railroad is running. And I don't know whether anybody here can help me with this or not, but I'm going to announce it anyway because I need the help. I thought that I had found a person to help me with all of the details that I'm running into a brick wall with, because to say I'm not very computer literate is an understatement of the week. And the team that we have to do these shows, to do the train shows, to do all of the different things that we're getting involved with is fantastic. And they're working hard, and they need help, but they're getting their own help for that. I need somebody that can help me cover the details, because I'm just getting snowed under here. This is, our next train show is going to have 60 vendors in it. And when you start talking about having to try to put on a show for that many vendors and to have it run successfully over 2 days, there's a tremendous amount of detail work involved. So I'm looking for somebody that can come in and be a member of our team, but can help me with all of this, the detail work. So if anybody knows somebody that might be interested, I would sure appreciate having you put them in touch with me. Dylan, if you can put my email up there, so if anybody doesn't have it, they can find out what my email is and give it to somebody else, because I'd really like to talk to somebody that would be interested in helping. And I'm sure the other team members would, because they're getting sick and tired of asking me for information and me not being able to provide it to them, because I don't have spreadsheets. I don't have all of this stuff digital. It's all on bits and pieces of paper. So Greg asked me for some information earlier today, and it took me about an hour and a half to get it all together because I had to find the individual pieces of paper that it was written on. So it's kind of getting ridiculous for me to try to do this. So with that said, if anybody has any other comments, please have them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming this evening, and look forward to seeing